everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to this spoiler review episode for episode 6 of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always here for this review, at least today, with my brother there, Shannon McClung. How are you, Shannon?
2025, Johnny.
Hey.
2025.
Already, I know, already. But yeah, I appreciate Shannon taking the time here on New Year's Day for us to review this particular episode. And thank you all who are watching it or listening to us. We appreciate it madly. We'll forego our normal introduction because we just want to get to the review here. Shannon, episode 6, Zero Friends Again. This one directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who is becoming a really, how can I say this, appreciated, looked forward to, and a director for these Star Wars shows, someone that people really want to see how she's growing as a director within the Star Wars universe. This one is also written by Myung-Jo Wesner, who wrote the last episode, but this one clocks in as the second, I'm going to say this, the second shortest episode of the season, yet it might be deceptively feel like a filler episode, but I felt like there was a lot here that the plot advanced. What did you think of this episode overall? What are your general feelings on this episode 6 of Skeleton Crew?
Bryce Dallas Howard has become the most consistent Star Wars TV director we have, and she delivers another great episode. I mean, I do understand whether or not it's a criticism, or at least the observation that it was short, like it was quick. But in terms of the storytelling, when you look at the kids, I mean, this is the episode where they became a crew.
Yeah,
I mean, this is where they all officially have become friends, and they've become a crew, and they have discovered they don't need a grown up. They don't need Jod.
Yeah.
So I really, really enjoyed it. Again, I think the show just continues to deliver. The criticism that it feels kiddie, I wouldn't disagree with that. It feels young. Right. But again, this is the type of show that had come out post Return of the Jedi, I'd have lost my mind for. Yeah. So for the folks that are enjoying it, which I count the three of us definitely. Yeah. This show just continues to deliver on a variety of aspects, and we'll chat about them forthcoming.
Yeah, for sure. I liked this episode as well, brother. I mean, I the episode 3 was the one that I think episode 4. Sorry, was the one that like some people were like, wait, why are they talking about kids in a civil war? This seems weird, and you're being way too kiddie in how to handle this. This one felt much more honest and real, and got you as an older person when you're watching the show to remember what it's like when you're 11 or 10 or 12 years old. You've got these new friendships. You're still navigating your emotional territory. You're hurt by certain things, or as KB says in the episode, like, I don't want to have zero friends again, hence the title of the episode. You feel sympathy for all of these kids. You're connected. Wim's, what was initially his aggressiveness to go and do these things, there's a real care he has for KB that I think was great to see here. Even the affection he gives to Fern by the end when she's like, I left you guys. Like, no, you saved us. Like, who cares about all of that in the past? Like, there was something really real here. And Neel, what he was navigating, and then with Fern figuring out how to actually become a leader when that adult leader that you've been kind of using as the back and forth, that buffer is out of the way, and you really have to kind of stand on your own business. And can you do it? And then, of course, the Jod stuff, which is going to be hilarious for us to talk about, and his charming maneuvers throughout here to get himself. So I found myself just sweetly smiling by the end of the episode, and I thought they nailed this really, really well here in this one. So, but let's dive into the kids. Shannon, let's not waste any time. We're going to break this up into basically 2 storylines: everything with the kids, and then everything with Jod and the pirates and what have you. So let's deal with the kids here, man. They're all stuck as we last left Lanupa. They're all 4 of them are stuck there on the planet, having gone through the trap door, and it is basically a kids slide that they all end up out the chute from. But I mean, it looks like a rough landing, Shannon, with the snow and the rocks, and certainly KB is a little messed up by it all, and they kind of tend to her and make sure she's okay. But you can tell she's a little frustrated by the situation. Her and Fern have a back and forth where she's like, you don't listen to anybody else. You just listen to yourself. You think if you can't do it, how can anyone else do it? Or if you don't think about the solution, no one else can possibly have the solution. So a kind of first break in their relationship that we see. Fern walks away, takes Neel, essentially volunteering him against his will to go with her to climb up the stairs and even climb up the ladder to go get to the ship. And even then, she's trying to force Neel to go faster, even though Neel doesn't. So she's confronting her own limits here as a captain and how to become better. On the other side, we see KB and Wim have their conversations there with those little crabs, I guess, trash crabs.
Trash crabs.
Yeah, which leads them to the massive trash crab, which is this giant behemoth of a thing there by the end. But we see also some soft and touching moments between Wim and KB. I mean, I think of this shot here that is so excellent, Shannon, totally out of a 1980s Richard Donner or Robert Zemeckis movie that you could see. And we get so much more with KB and some tenderness and some softness as she walks him through the situation. And he does end up saving her by the end, and they're stronger for it. And then Fern and Neel come down and save them on the ship. And now they're together. They shed the skin of the old ship, symbolism, go into the new ship, and they're fully a crew, as you said. So what were your thoughts about how we navigated everything with the kids here and how they became a crew fully, as you said, without not needing an adult by the end of this episode?
Well, I mean, they really took a page right out of Richard Donner's Goonies playbook with that slide, to the point that as they're popping out of like the 4 separate tubes, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it was 4 separate slides in the movie as well to kind of dump them out into the lagoon. But no, I thought that was a lot of fun. And the idea that Fern, the lesson that Fern learned, is a good leader. I know it rhymes. The old Fern learn. But as a leader, the lesson she learned was to listen.
Yeah.
That's something a good leader has to do. When KB expressed some hesitation in the last episode about going down into that kind of steamy area and like what it could potentially do to, the mechanics, Fern's like, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. She's starting to understand how to look at things from other people's points of view.
Yeah.
And that is something that Neel helped her do as they were climbing up, him saying, I can't go as fast as you. You have to understand, like you have to acknowledge that not everyone can do what you can. I don't have those spider legs that you do. So I thought that whole thing was really, really sweet. And then when you go over onto the Wim and KB side, this is the first time that we're finding out why KB has that visor. It's because there was an accident. Yes. And do we need to know what happened? No, we just need to know that something happened in KB's past because of this thing that she has now. She feels like she doesn't have any friends because of this, because that accident made her different. I mean, again, thinking about 80s kids movies, like, oh, this is the kid with asthma that can't do everything. The really, really funny thing with Wim, because amongst the 4 kids, I mean, I think the 4 kids are all really good, but I do think Wim carries the load of the story, and I feel like he's probably on the weaker side of the 4 kids. I think he has the most to do, but also he's not as strong as the other 3. I really did like the trash crab when he says, they're speaking, they're intelligent, which you think back to Star Wars Episode 1 when Jar Jar says to Qui-Gon, I speak, and Qui-Gon says the ability to speak does not make you intelligent. I mean, this is so Wim's point of view is like, kind of flying in the face of a classic Jedi master. But you see the really, really good side of Wim, that Wim has this enormous heart. Yeah. So as KB is explaining this, the visor that she has, her Augs, how they got corroded. Yeah. Like if she doesn't say, if she says something to Fern, maybe Fern's going to stop being her friend. And Wim, I don't think believes that. I mean, more from Fern's point of view, like, no, you should tell her. But also, even if that were true, be friends with me and Neel. Yeah. Like, you can see Wim as a character is so accepting of people. I did think it was really funny when the giant mama crab comes out and Wim's realization of like, why do I always pick the wrong? Why are the good guys that I think are going to be good guys never good? So watching them jump onto that little tow ship
Yeah.
that Fern and Neel are on, and then get into their ship as it's kind of being Toy Story 3'd with that
Yeah.
giant
Good
that
call.
metal that metal chewer, but as it is sort of shedding its skin, like that is the moment that the kids became a crew. You saw what each of them bring to the table, but that's the moment that the Onyx Cinder stopped being the Onyx Cinder. It stopped being this pirate ship, and it
Right.
started to be our skeleton crew ship.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it, man. I really did. There's so much sweetness in this episode and in their interactions and in their conversations. I think every one of them grows by the end of the episode, right? Like Wim being called upon I mean, when KB is giving him his flowers for saving her, he's like legitimately like honored by it all, but he's also flipped out about the fact that she's like when she's got her stuff put within her and then she's ready to go. Wim is like, wait, what just happened? You almost died a second ago. Why are you all just like doing? So it's the reality of all of that that works so well that I thoroughly enjoyed. Yes, the conversations with KB and Fern were a little hard to have, but those are all conversations that you need to have. And then KB admitting to Wim about her issues with Fern and how she's afraid to say these things because she's afraid to lose her. And the thing is, in actuality, if there's someone worth keeping, they're not gonna want to walk away from you when you express your vulnerability or your weakness or your fear, because other people have different vulnerabilities, different weaknesses and fear. And I think you're right. That's what struck me when I was doing my reaction, Shannon. KB is like a lot of kids that are born with something, or as you said, have an accident and then they have to navigate their lives after that accident and who sticks around, who doesn't. Because there's a weird thing that happens with people that when you have an accident, some people don't want to be around that because they feel it reflects back to them a certain way, or they don't feel like they can fully give you the attention you deserve. So they feel bad. And so they don't want to be around something that makes them feel bad. It's really weird. And other people gravitate to it to help and to be there, to assist, to want to be there for you more. So I love that was a symbolic undercurrent throughout with her situation. It was either something she was born with or an accident. In this case, it's an accident. But sometimes people are born with the diabetes, born with childhood cancer, born with whatever, and then they feel self-conscious. And so the fact that Wim was like, I don't care about any of that. Like, come be friends with us. There's something really powerful and strong about that. But I also think Fern learning by the end of the episode how to lead, how to work with them better, that came true on the ship. And with KB's like, I'm going to do this. I think this has figured it out. Hey, why don't you fly the ship? Great, you fly. I'm KB or Neel, you hit the throttle, I'll steer. So there's no ego there. Wim says, I'm going to go grab the gun. It's great, go do that thing. Let me know what's going on. They're all communicating with each other. I mean, even KB has a moment like what's his face on the space station in Armageddon, where he's like, I don't want to be on this ship anymore. And make it work. But they're all working in tandem by the end because they've been honest with each other about their feelings and where they're at. And it's so when at the end, Fern and Wim have their exchange about she's like, I'm sorry I left you guys behind. And Wim is like, no, you saved us. That's what matters. Forget all that other stuff. You saved us. And so even in that moment, there's a quiet amount of grace that he's giving Fern and respect that he's given Fern. And I think Fern now moves into the captainship position without having forced her way into it. They're willing to follow her. And that's really the sign of a great leader. And so all of that was so much fun to see, along with the action sequence, along with the stuff with the trash compactor, all of it. Shannon, just worked so well. I was so surprised at how well that was written, how well that fit together by the end,
Yeah, and I think like another great part with Wim is when KB is sort of her ogs are repaired. She has that new cylinder. When she says to Wim like sorry that saving someone's life wasn't more wasn't like a bigger moment for you. But I think that's another thing with Wim is he had these expectations about going out on this huge adventure,
right?
And reading these stories about the Jedi and being a hero, and what being a hero looks like in reality it can be a little different. I mean, he literally saved KB's life, And so now he knows what it feels like. I mean, and again, when you watch them on the ship as they're each sort of taking up their positions, and Wim, you find out Wim's going to be a good gunner.
Yes.
Fern belongs in the captain's seat. I mean, yeah, I just thought writing wise, again, because it was a shorter episode, and I think a lot of times we as audience members, we see a shorter runtime, and sometimes we feel a little cheated, like, oh no, you know, you're going to leave something out. Sometimes, and this was sort of one of the perils of network television, is like they have a set time that they have to hit every single week, and it doesn't matter if the story feels like there's side stories they don't care about, because they have to hit that specific runtime, where streaming gives them a little more flexibility. And so even though this was a short episode, I thought from beginning to end it was packed to the gills with good stuff. So even though it was shorter, I found it wholly satisfying.
Agreed. All right, well, let's move on to the Jode of it all. Let's move on to this situation here with Jode and Pocket and Brutus and the treasures here. This is a fascinating storyline within this particular episode. We see Jode climb out of that hatch, and he is covered in treasure, a la Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. And he thinks he's going to be able to buy his way out of the situation with a hotelier. But right behind him, Brutus's crew has shown up, and Julia White's there. And then when he tries to call upon SM-33, they immediately incapacitate SM-33. They arrest him, bring him onto the ship. Brutus delivers his justice. Do I have a picture of Brutus? I don't know if I do. Okay, I don't. Oh, no, wait, there it is. Brutus delivers his justice again, as if this is like going for an appeal of the judge that convicted you the first time. And so he convicted again. And Jode is essentially sentenced to death by airlock, which is what happened in the first episode, in the opening episode there. He sent someone to death by airlock. And but Jode launches into what I think is a bit of an allusion to Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar. And he's ironically doing it to a guy named Brutus, and essentially taking away the crew of Brutus and bringing it back under him by promising them eternal treasure at Attin, with a pirate shanty about Tac Renard, and the idea that he's going to be able to provide for them down the road. And it ends up working. And Brutus says to him, all right, you've got your reprieve, but if there's nothing on that Attin, you're going to die. We're going to kill you. Yeah, exactly. You've got that throughout. And I make the Julius Caesar reference because at the time when Mark Antony delivers the speech, everyone's on Caesar's side, but then on Brutus and Cassius' side against Caesar. But by the end of Brutus's speech, they're now against Brutus and Cassius and for Caesar. So it's a little bit of a twist on that. But I thought this was fantastic for what it was. We didn't get enough Pocket, so hopefully she'll be back later on. But this was fun. What did you think of this storyline here in this episode?
Well, Kelly MacDonald, who plays Pocket, who is a very well-known performer, but I mean, I think this is also where one of the strengths of this show has been its casting. Even though I think the adult side of the story, you're going to get more consistent performances because a lot of these folks, they've been doing this a long time. Like they have reached that level for a reason. With another recent Star Wars show that we were not the biggest fans of, I thought that casting was a lot of it was way off the mark. Bringing someone like Kelly MacDonald in, she's just so, I mean, her design is incredible. Like she just is so specific looking, but the way that she comes in, like she's getting to use her natural Irish accent. I mean, she's just she brings so much life to a role. Like that could have been anybody. Right. Like I think a lot to like, and this is not a Star Wars show, but like Falcon and Winter Soldier, I thought some of the people that they cast, some of the locals that they cast, because they shot it, a lot of it in Atlanta, were perfectly fine actors, but they didn't necessarily have the thing. Where they just bring so much life to a role, and some of that has to do with talent, and some of it has to do with experience. But Kelly MacDonald, she makes such an impression right off the bat. And because I was not here for the previous episode, so I did want to talk about her a little bit. But I mean, I don't know if she's going to be hanging out with that crew. Like we certainly didn't see her on the ship. But I hope she's a character that does pop back up, whether it's in this series or another this era set series, because she was just fantastic. Yeah, I mean, this was Jod's, Hail Mary.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows, like, I am back under the thumb of my captors, and if I want to survive this, I have to give them something.
Yeah.
And like, I think he was willing to cut Jaleel White in, Gunter in, and
Yeah.
nobody else. Like, he's trying to retain as much of this as he can, but at the same time, he's also a con man. I mean, would he double cross him at the end? Maybe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just this, I mean, I hadn't thought about the Julius Caesar angle, the fact that he is literally talking to someone called, he's in opposition to someone called Brutus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought the speech was good, and I thought ultimately, like, yeah, he won just enough goodwill from the crew to not be shot out into the airlock right then and there.
Yeah.
Also to the design, again, them really leaning into the pirate essence of the series.
Yeah.
The hourglass with the plasma instead of the sand. I mean, even the look of Brutus having this bandolier with like 3 or 4 blasters stuck into the belt.
Yeah.
Like, pirates had this because those pistols, those flintlocks had one shot. So like, why you would have multiple? Like, does it make sense? No, not at all. But does it look cool? Yes, and I think that's good enough for a show like Skeleton Crew. I love the look of Brutus. Like, my wife and I disagree on this. She feels like the articulation of the mask isn't great, and I'm like, I'll disagree with you there, because certainly when you watch, A New Hope, there's some people in some rubber masks in the background.
Yeah.
And I personally, I love the look of Brutus. But yeah, I mean, now we know, like, the kids, everyone has the coordinates to add Attin.
Yeah. We find out KB has the coordinates. Yeah.
We are coming to a head here. So, but across the board, Jude Law is great in this role as he continues to, embody Long John Silver. But yeah, I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. And like you said, the embodying of a Long John Silver is an important part of it all. But you have to understand, you have to see how this guy survived. How could this guy survive? He has so many different names. All these people owe him money. And it's just like Harrison Ford or Han Solo. Like, you got to see how Solo gets away with the things he gets away with. You got to see how people keep giving Solo a shot. What is it about him? What does he do? What kind of sorcery or magic does he do with his mouth that allows him to stay alive? And we've seen now a couple of moments throughout the season where we see what Jode has been able to do in order to keep himself alive. And this is another one of those moments. What a monologue. He didn't start just when the plasma turned over. He wasn't desperate. He wasn't sad. He built into it. I'm hungry. Are you hungry? I'm hungry. And I don't want to be hungry anymore. I'm tired of being hungry. Aren't we all hungry? Aren't all of you hungry? And Brutus sensed he was losing control of the crew and tried to stop him. But he's like, look, I have the right. Was it right of last appeal or whatever it is? And then there's still plasma left in the blue thing, so you got to honor that. So even amongst the crazy pirates, there's still some semblance of a foundational code that allows them to adhere to it and have some semblance of a society constructed there. And so he's allowed to finish, and by the end, he is essentially, as you said, won just enough goodwill to cross across that line to stay alive. So what are your thoughts here, Shannon, as we head to what seems to be at Attin? Because I think we've got 2 episodes left in this one, because that was 6.
2, right?
Yeah, I think 2. So what we didn't see the parents this episode, and it seems like the parents are going to have 2 more episodes. The parents are going to have to overcome whatever's coming with the supervisor. So we probably have 1 episode where maybe they get to Attin all together. Maybe Jude Law and his pirate crew take over at Attin, and then episode 8 is when the kids and the parents come together to retake the planet. But what's the supervisor's role in it? So what do you anticipate we're going to get coming up next?
Well, I mean, we have to find out who Captain Renaud is, first of all.
Good point. Yeah.
And, the fact that they had that holographic recording, but it was, fuzzy, so we couldn't actually see who the captain was. Part of me thinks, like, is the captain SM-33? Is that a possibility? Because normally when there's some reveal of a character,
that's a great theory.
You typically have met that character, not all the time, but sometimes. but the idea that SN33 is actually Captain Renaud, I think it's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be somebody else.
That could work. That could work. Yeah.
Well, I was really trying to listen to the voice, and I'm like, how much does this sound like Nick Frost? But I mean, at the end, I mean, if they follow that Treasure Island model, I mean, Jude Law is getting away.
Yeah,
He's
probably.
ultimately going to side with the kids. Or he's going to side with self-preservation, which is going to align with the kids and the parents. But I imagine Brutus and Gunter and the rest of the crew, they're probably doomed. But yeah, there is a lot of real estate to cover, because one, are they going to find that mint? Does that mint still exist?
Good job. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Because again, we don't know how long that chip's been there. So we have to find if the mint exists, how the kids and the parents repel these pirates, and how Long John Jude Law gets away.
Yeah, and how does Joe keep coming up with Old Republic credits in his pocket? I thought that was the last one he threw into the acid thing, but all of a sudden he had one to show everybody. So that's going to be interesting to see how many of those he actually has versus what we thought was that he was surrendering them all to the hotelier, in essence, in order to get them a great room. So
a pirate never gives you their last credit. There's always one more. But also, it's sort of like, action movies in the 80s. That gun has 6 bullets.
That's right.
And unless it's Clue, sometimes those bullets magically multiply.
I'm always reminded of that scene in in Shrek, when Donkey and Puss switch bodies, and Donkey realizes that Puss has a bag of gold inside of his boot, and he goes, "Oh, how did that get there?" He's always playing like he's poor, but he always has money. So yeah, it's a good point you make. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for this particular episode of Skeleton Crew, episode 6 here. One that both of us thoroughly enjoyed here as we go into the final 2 episodes. And once again, Bryce Dallas Howard, a lot of credit, I think, for the direction here. And some of these shots, yes, I know it's the volume, but they're still gorgeous. They're still beautiful to look at. And the framing of these shots, the construction of these shots, I think are incredible when you take a look at them. So shout out to the direction and cinematography, the writing, and the performances throughout this episode as we go into episode 7. I'm sure Vogel will be back for our episode 7 and 8 reviews. He couldn't make it today. But don't forget to look for our main show happening, of course, later on this week, with all 3 of us coming together to talk about all the geek stuff going on in the world of entertainment. All right, Shannon, what do we have to tell them as we wrap up besides that?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies. On Instagram, @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @TheRocha Says. Hey, and Happy New Year.
That's right. Happy New Year to everybody. We love you madly. Thanks for giving the Geek Buddies another great year doing this show, and so many new people have come aboard to be fans of the Geek Buddies. We appreciate it. Even my fellow 2 Geek Buddies are getting stopped in the streets by fans who are talking about how much they enjoy the show, and there's nothing greater than that. So it's great to see that is happening out there with more people coming aboard the Geek Buddies train. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode of Skeleton Crew on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies.